there. I have my model paints, they're perfect. So we sent somebody to his apartment to get his actual model paints, and then photos of me with it all over my hands. And Guillermo and I ended up I tried with a brush, but I ended up massaging it. Now I don't paint all the sets myself, but it makes it look like this photo, like I'm doing everything myself. But I massaged his model paints into this pointy thing. It's actually kind of lewd when I think of it.
What was the effect he was going for? Was it like just a sort of aging of?
Yeah, it was just everything. You know, we push it. There's so many layers in what we do, and I hope you guys notice it when you see the film. You know, layers of aging and adding moss and more aging and adding leaves and the Moss Squad and Kate's costume, same thing, layers of netting and stuff. And I think that's kind of how we achieve Guillermo's vision. This, you know, very beautifully layered, live, you know, human thing that we're creating.
He talks a lot about the importance of aging. You know, one of the quotes he gave me in our interview was that he's an archaeologist who creates his own ruins. And I wondered if that applies to the costumes as well. I know you drew from
ruins.
Well, yeah, because you drew from a lot of natural influences. I think there's a beautiful, like, I don't know what kind of rock it is, but sort of the malachite, yeah, the green and black layered together, and you can see that in the costumes. You can see the echoes of moths and scarab beetles and things like that in your costumes. But what was the effect of age and sense of sort of an antique
it was
archaeological quality?
It's sort of two things at once, because, you know, it's sometimes you get these double instructions. You know, I want color, but I also want tone and mood. So although we had quite saturated colors for Elizabeth and Victor and, you know, various characters, it was about a lot to do with about feeling. You know, when we approached the design, it was a lot about feeling and the tone and mood of melancholy, as well as the sort of operatic scale. And, you know, we looked at a lot at painting with color, and this was something, you know, when I went to the Tiffany archives, we heard about the process there with stained glass work and iridescence and that. And, you know, we all work in very similar process, and it was painting with light. So we didn't use blacks, we used greens with the blues, we used purples, and to get depth and tone, but also with the layers of transparency to give it a quality that, you know, for me, we're trying to capture that essence of memory, sort of a painterly effect. Like all the work that we do together is to a very painterly approach. So the costumes had to do the same thing, and that was layers of color. And so it's trying to create sort of another brushstroke through color and to give it that tone and mood.
Is decay part of what you were trying
Always.
to convey? Yeah. Because you, like I said, you're drawing from insects, and the insects are alive, but they're also part of what breaks down things. And I know
nature's always doing that, and that's very present in the novel when you read that. The sort of, you know, the seasonal change, the decay of a leaf, you know, something simple like that. And we're always looking at each other's work. Guillermo asked me to become the set, Tamara the lighting. You might have heard him speak about this, but it's when you look at the way Dan and Guillermo were shooting these wide shots that then go into these intense close-ups. We go inside the creature's body, and everything in nature, the blood cells are intense. And I've got this canvas called a crinoline. And, you know, so it was an opportunity sort of to treat that other layer of element that sort of served the story, Elizabeth's interest in that, but use anatomy to create the imagery of insects and fractal patterns and that. So it was an opportunity to sort of do the same as the character. We have these big landscapes and wide shots with the characters in silhouette, and then as you come in close, you get this intensity of nature, and, you know, nature's sort of always changing and moving, and there's what do you call it? I had all these words, but they sort of slammed out. You know, but she's always shifting and changing in colours and patterns, and all the characters do that. All the characters have arcs that shift and change. They mirror each other and they reflect each other. And we do that with the lighting. We do that with the set all the time.
Well, with the production design, Tamara, the similar thing is happening, right? It's sort of decay and rebirth. The laboratory is not a laboratory, it's a water tower that once supplied water, which is life-giving to its community, but now it's a ruin, and now it's abandoned. But now it's inhabited by a mad doctor and his monster.
You know, in designing that, we really had to think about all the different steps. So yes, it was an abandoned water tower, and it had the Medusa, which for Guillermo was a symbol of a misunderstood monster, but also it was used in water towers, like even in ancient Rome, apparently. So, you know, we had to design that look and then design the renovation look, a short scene, but William's there and we're adding parts of the sets, and then we had to do the full lab, the creation, and then the destruction. So, you know, the lobby set, for example, where they enter into the tower, you know, that had two very distinct looks, which, you know, with the help of our wonderful visual effects team, we kind of, you know, redressed it for the winter look when the creature returns and discovers his story. But I had to, you know, while I was designing it, I was designing that always in there, you know, the crumbled, you know, decayed walls. I mean, the nice thing about Guillermo is he loves decay and history and that sense of layering that you get with aging, and I do too. So we're just in it for the thickness of it, really.
Miles, everybody knows by now that this is a lifelong quest for him to make this film. And when you've been working with him since Shape of Water, is that right?
Actually, Mama, we met on Mama. He was directing Pacific Rim, and he had agreed to produce a movie with a first-time director, Andy Muschietti, and needed someone to produce that. So we met our friend Edgar Wright. I had produced Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Edgar introduced us. I did Mama, and then we did 4 Years of the Strain, then Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, Cabinet of Curiosities, and now this.
And now Frankenstein. But when he comes to you and says, now's the time to make Frankenstein, and he has these grand plans, I think operatic is the word I use to describe this movie to people. What are you looking at as a producer and saying, okay, here's what we have to do? Like, what was the first step in making this all come together?
Well, put the coffee on. You know, knowing that it had been a bucket list project of his for really his whole life, and he had tried to get it made a number of times. I mean, it may or may not be a secret that everybody in town has at one point or another passed on this movie. So, you know, when he came to Netflix, Ted asked him, you know, what do you really want to do? And he said, I want to do two things that I've always wanted to do, which are Pinocchio and Frankenstein. So he did Pinocchio, and then it was evident that he was going to do it. I just thought this is a great time. You know, I'm glad that he didn't do it, you know, before he became a father, because the father-son, you know, part of it is so important. And even though, you know, he was a son making it for his father, but now he's a father and a son, and he can have the entire perspective. You know, and he was 25 years along with his filmmaking prowess, and, you know, he's at the height of his filmmaking power. So we thought that the timing was great. We were also really grateful that, you know, we had established this team. You know, Tamara and I had been working together for 25 years. She had worked with Guillermo even before that on Mimic as an art director. Kate for a long time, you know, Dan for a long time. So we had a really tight team. So, you know, it felt like it was the right time and the table was set. But it just meant that there was a lot of, you know, call it responsibility, call it pressure, call it whatever you want. But there were going to be no compromises on this, nothing left on the table. So we all knew that this was the Mount Everest for him, and that we had to do it right. So that started very early on. Tamara and I went with Guillermo and our concept designer, Guy Davis, to Scotland a year before we started shooting. We started looking at places and started drawing things. And Kate and Tamara both started very early. Mike Hill started very early. So just, I think, knowing what the stakes were, knowing how difficult it would be, knowing how important it was to Guillermo, it was just kind of, and he knew exactly what he wanted. He always does, but even more so, he had had so many years to think about this. You know, the text was so important to him. He knew how he wanted to adapt it, even though that changed and evolved during our prep. It was a little bit easy. Like he really was very specific about what he wanted. So at a certain degree, it's just execution. But you know, we knew how important it was, and I think that everyone sort of drank that Kool-Aid early on.
I have a quote from Guillermo from our conversation that I really love, and he was saying, we made a pediment for a building that is almost 3 stories high. I wish I could do Guillermo's voice. He has such a beautiful voice. I love his accent. No. But again, imagine this in Guillermo's voice. He says, we made a pediment for a building that is almost 3 stories high. This is the base of the water tower. Miles and I sat down, and he said, do you need that? I say, 100% I need it, because it gives you the scale, the mythological scale of the movie, outsizes all the little human drama. the Medusa head, 100% we need it. It needs to be the witness of everything. And I wondered if you could share your memory of that moment of realizing we're going to build it.
Yeah, well, welcome to my life. I mean, this is one of 1,000 such conversations where I tap out usually at the end of all the. But no, it's really.
It doesn't sound like you're resisting him. It just sounds like you're saying, what do you need, and we'll get it for you.
I think what that was so if you talk about the tower, for example, that was 7 or 8 sets. So it was that exterior set where the carriage pulls up, where we knew we were never going to build a 400-foot tower. So the basis of my opinion was at least, okay, where does that stop? And it was a huge set that we shot on for, what was it, 2 days? That took
A little bit more than
2 or
that.
3 days, took many months to build. Ironically, we built it on the exact same space where we had built the carnival for Nightmare Alley, the Markham Fairground. But, you know, and then the lab and the creature's lair and Victor's quarters and the upper thing and the tower. So 7 sets. In that particular set, I said, do we need all of these 60-foot walls by 30-foot walls? Could they be 40 by 20? And I think we did end up shorting one. I had a minor victory there.
Was a funny one,
It was
wasn't it?
one side of it that we didn't do.
I was just going to the bedroom. When you were working out the bedroom, that floor plan changed about 5 times in front.
Well, what Guillermo does is every time, and Tamara will tell you this, you walk into a set and we usually tape it out on the floors, and he'll say, I need 8 feet bigger and 3
10
shades
feet.
darker, 10 feet. And then you walk in again, and then it's another 3 feet bigger and 2 shades darker. So it's like kind of a predictable, like you kind of pull a string on his back and you'll know. It's just got to be that. So and pretty soon you're at the fire lanes in the stage and like going sideways to get by them. So, you know, that's just, we're used to it, and it's a lovely thing. But you know, I just try and keep them honest on things is really what it is.
The thing that impressed me when I visited your sets too is that they're often 360 degrees. That bedroom set, you walk into a sound stage and it's just you know, it looks like a warehouse, and you see the 2x4s on the exterior, and then you walk through a doorway and you're in like a 16th century castle bedroom, and everything, it looks, if you were to wake up there, you'd think you were in a fairy tale. Tell me about the purpose of creating something that's so immersive. That's kind of rare, isn't
I
it?
thought we should rent them on Airbnb for like an Airbnb experience.
Complete with
You know,
science
the thing
project.
With doing it 360 degrees is really Guillermo and Dan will shoot every corner of it and appreciate every corner of it. So, you know, I have worked with people and done sets where you do 3 walls and that's it because you agree you're never going to look that way. But Guillermo has a way with a camera on a crane. Dan lights from the outside, single point lighting, and you're seeing it. That camera is swinging around every corner. You know, I'm also very aware in those huge sets that even the smallest detail, that little piece of moss that, you know, I put in the corner there, and we fuss with the aging. I mean, everything is seen. So it's all meant to be picture perfect for the camera.
Well, I think the other thing is it's for the actors. And he wants the actors to be able to step into a space and feel like it's a real space and not be looking at a tennis ball on the end of a stick that's moving around. Like, it's really critical, and Jacob and Oscar and Mia will all tell you this, and Christoph, that when they walk in there, it takes their breath away, and now as that character, they can feel like that is their place, and it just makes it that much easier for them to fall into their role.
Part of that immersion is the extras. This is a vast cast. It's a community of people that we see on screen who are, this isn't just a two-hander. Kate, I think everybody's focusing on, you know, the Mia costumes. They're so glorious. The creature in his sort of animalistic costumes. Victor and his bloody finery. But you've created all of these costumes with your team for all of the background actors, and
They're a huge part of Guillermo's language. They're part of the painting. They're part of the landscape. And, you know, again, you know, when Tamara's looking at the colour palette of Edinburgh, you know, we used all the colours that she found in the streets of Edinburgh and used that as our textiles and dye colours for the palette of the extras. The world of young Victor, red, black and white, the funeral, you know, we had to keep the tone consistent with the rest of the world that Guillermo was creating, this operatic and melodramatic world. So, you know, the funerals were taken from effigies, it was a very stylized group of nobles. It wasn't about the individual. We did the livery and servants because, again, it's a Guillermo version of it. Whenever I presented something and, go, it's Victorian, he goes, no, it's, we're in this, give me this world. And so we had the Crimean battlefield that we all got so excited about the Crimean. There were originally 2 scenes and we were creating, I don't know, the full war epic, War and Peace, and he was going, I only need this. But we did build all the different uniforms for that, for the corpses, the ship that we worked on together, the background there are part of the palette. Guillermo talks about white representing death, and really the captain and the crew, a bit like the Ancient Mariner, it's sort of Peter at the gate, and this is the judgment for Victor. So that world is heightened. We rolled our sailors in kitty litter. It's a fun thing to do. But all of that world was to be part of the landscape and create this language, and that went through to weddings and soirees. The images that we were creating with Mia as the mother and Mia as Elizabeth, this idea of memories and layers that were in the coats, the creature, the veiling. We used that throughout all our crowd scenes, the weddings, the funerals. It's all about looking through Victor's point of view and the creature's point of view, and this is memory. So it's, you don't always, with the mother it was about hearing her voice, and then everything else is part of that language. So the language we established, we worked through all the extras, and it's sometimes you get a chance to sort of make more of the world with the extras, So
You mentioned white as a symbol of death. The colors that stick out in my memory are white, green, red, and black. Is there anything I'm missing, or are those the primary?
those are the main ones, and the red is.
There are more colors.
There are always more colours, but Tamara and I, red was a huge part of Guillermo's language, and it's the colour link that we get at the beginning of the film. We have Claire in establishing the language with that red veil, and then the blood print of her hand on young Victor becomes the red gloves. We move into the apartment, and Tamara's world takes over with the big giant 4-poster bed that he carts around that belongs to his mother, which is quite weird. And then and then we have going back to Claire, her effigy in the coffin. The red roses that art department put around her effigy. We created that in Elizabeth's bonnet. So Guillermo uses this language all the time, guiding us. It's a circular story, and the motifs that are in the set are in the costumes, and we end with Mia, sort of bleeding out through the tulle, and that ends the story of the cycle that Guillermo's creating. So we all work with Guillermo to echo the language of colour, the red and green of the batteries. We do that within Victor's gown, so we're always playing under Guillermo's guidance with that.
Well, that was what I was going to bring up, is those giant voltaic